Hi all. We will be presenting our work, QUICensor. This is a side channel technique for inferring quick interference across the internet. This is joint work with Professor Alex and Professor Fong. Before we dive in, let me motivate our work a little bit. Internet censorship is a global phenomenon enabled by the use of protocols the internet relies on. These protocols are either plain text or friendly for analysis by middle boxes. A key question with modern protocols such as QUIC is to measure if censors have caught it. While evidence for QUIC censorship exists from prior studies in multiple countries, measurements are limited by in-country vantage points. Before we dive in, let me present a brief overview of two protocols, DNS and QUIC, we use in the study. DNS translates names to addresses. We use authoritative name servers for managing zones and recursive resolvers for traversal. Standard DNS traffic is sent as plaintext over UDP. This absence of encryption makes queries vulnerable to monitoring, manipulation, and censorship by network middleboxes. Encrypted solutions like DOH, DOH3, both of which run DNS over HTTP or HTTP3, and DOQ, DNS over QUIC, are being adopted, but they are not the default. We want QUIC as a modern, reliable transport protocol layered on top of UDP. It adds TLS 1.3 by default, minimizing connection latency and ensuring immediate security. A major feature is the encryption of packet headers. This makes it substantially more difficult for middleboxes to parse QUIC payloads. QUIC runs underneath HTTP3, DNS over QUIC, and applications like SSH3. That brings us to the problem statement. How do we measure QUIC interference at scale? Prior QUIC measurement studies procured machines or volunteers inside countries of interest, sent QUIC probes, and processed the packet capture. But it is difficult to get VMs in all countries of interest. Using volunteers also puts them at risk. We need a better approach that scales better, and side channels are one. A side channel requires answering the following questions. What do we sample? Where do we do that? And how do we interpret the resulting packet captures? In this study, we use DNS injection as a side channel for measuring QUIC inference. DNS injectors are common in internet censorship, and often they're bidirectional. What I mean by that is they exhibit the same behavior irrespective of the source address. We describe the high-level steps in our measurements. We first find a set of destination addresses, send DNS and QUIC probes, and then process the normal and injected responses to observe QUIC censorship. Our constraints are that it must be ethical by reducing impact on individuals as well as infrastructure. We also want to obtain a broad coverage of network paths across the internet. To build a set of destination addresses to be used as probe targets, we use authoritative name server addresses. These servers are widespread across the world and generally expect traffic from unknown sources. We obtain these servers through active network scan datasets and certificate transparency logs. This maps to about 650K addresses, mapped to approximately 3 million names. More than 50% of countries in our dataset have at least 100 targets this way. Based on received responses, we categorize in-path sensors based on observable changes in DNS responses. We also infer on-path sensors using a combination of TTL values and residual censorship. We additionally send a probe with opt-out info for ethical reasons and for baseline measurements. By analyzing responses to our probes, we propose 3 key signals to detect QUIC inspection and interference. The first, DNS injectors may stop injection if they observe a QUIC payload on path and apply residual censorship to further packets on this connection tuple. Secondly, the received responses may contain different TTL values before and after a QUIC probe is sent. This is similar to the first, except it is more resilient to packet losses. The third signal infers in-path censorship using packet reachability measurements. Our measurements are repeated from 2 different source locations, 4 times using the sensor name and thrice using the opt-out domain. In this signal, we observe differences in injected DNS responses marked by packets 2 and 7. Our hypothesis is that an injector observes a QUIC handshake and suppresses DNS injection immediately. This implies that the middle box applies DPI, deep packet inspection, to detect non-DNS UDP packets such as QUIC. We plot the signal from all of our datasets. The y-axis represents the proportion of addresses probed within a country, and the x-axis represents the top 8 countries by the absolute number. The shaded region represents the uncertainty bounds for packet losses derived from our datasets. RAND shows a strong signal from both measurement locations here. In the second signal, we mark on-path injection when the injected DNS responses have a TTL difference larger than 10. The assumption is that routes on the internet are relatively stable over a short span of time. The signal indicates that a middlebox may be on path and the middlebox is positioned far apart from the destination. For future measurements, this also allows us to customize TTL values to traverse only the middleboxes and not reach the destination. Here, the TTL signal highlights the same observation from signal 1 while significantly reducing measurement noise. The other countries measured show little to no indication of the signal. The last signal shows how packet reachability can be inferred from our probes. The diagram shows two patterns of responses we observe. When a benign query is sent, for instance, our opt-out domain, we observe no format error responses from mailboxes or name servers. Alternatively, when a censored query is sent, we observe format errors to our QUIC payloads. In theory, responses to QUIC payloads should not depend on DNS queries previously sent on the same connection tuple. The fact that they're different implies in-path interference. Another key observation is that for probes sent from one specific source location, we observe this pattern on probes sent to Iran, Russia, and to a smaller degree, China. This leads us to our key observation next, that DNS injection affects subsequent packet traversal across network paths. We propose the use of DNS injection to enable deeper packet traversal across networks. Assuming a firewall fronting a DNS injector, the presence of DNS injection indicates a two-way connection flow on this tuple to the firewall, which then allows our probes to pass through without any interference. When we send a QUIC payload without the DNS priming, we receive significantly fewer format errors, supporting this theory. In conclusion, we make the following contributions. We provide a way to reach infrastructure name servers at scale. We propose a method to observe on-path and in-path interference to QUIC payloads. We also showcase a technique to improve path traversability for censorship measurement in the presence of firewalls. We also find indications of load-dependent injection from DNS injectors and potential for DNS amplification attacks on a select few networks. We have a few limitations we intend to address in the future by using more vantage points, focusing on other non-DNS ports for probing QUIC, and by running the measurements longitudinally. I would like to thank Professor Alex and Professor Fong for their mentorship. I'm also grateful to the Internet Society Pulse Fellowship for this opportunity, and special thanks to Amrish, Hannah, and Robbie for their inputs. Thank you for your patience, and please email me with any questions you might have.